So I'm super excited to hand over to Karen Fisher now for the Volunteer Voices session, where we get to hear from volunteers about their experience with the NPMS. I'd like to introduce Karen, who's going to be facilitating this session. And Karen's our volunteer support officer, and I'm sure the name at the end of many emails and many calls over the last 2 years. Karen is often the first port of call with many volunteer inquiries and communications, and Karen has a lot of experience both with Plant Life and the Woodland Trust previously with managing and supporting volunteers. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Rachel. Brilliant. And good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to introduce you, to welcome you to this Volunteer Voices session of the programme, because above all else, today is about celebrating you and your efforts and what you've enabled to happen in the last 10 years or so. So you are the reason that we're at this point, and we're here today reflecting on 10 years among the wildflowers and looking forward excitedly to the next 10 and beyond. In the last financial year alone, you donated an incredible 5,700 volunteer hours of your time to the scheme. That's time spent visiting your square and doing a recce, setting up plots, surveying, puzzling over ID, taking and uploading photographs, and of course emails back and forth to NPMS support. So there's a myriad of things that you all do, which I think you'll all agree is a vast and very impressive collective effort. I certainly think so. As Rachel's just mentioned, NPMS is an approach of all the talents. There really are more ways to get involved now than ever. So we've got our data entry and volunteer photography roles, and they all help to grow our NPMS community and ensure that there's something for everyone. So if people don't fancy surveying anymore, there's always a way to be involved, and you're always a part of the community. There's various other things that you can do aside from actual survey, so that's great. So in this session, we're going to be hearing from some of our volunteers with a series of short talks and videos that they've produced, and they're going to be taking us on a virtual journey out into the field. So our next guest is Chris Millett, and if we could have Chris's first slide, and if Chris, you could turn on your audio and camera. Thank you. I can see that you've just done that. And I'll introduce you. So Chris is based in Gloucestershire. He's been volunteering since the very start in 2015. So with us on the whole journey so far. He started out with a square overlapping the Cotswold Commons and Beechwood's NNR and the National Trust Ebworth estate. And he's added in another square, 3 squares along the way at later stages. So he's now got a grand total of 4, and he's done an incredible 250 surveys. So a hugely valuable contribution. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Chris. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. All right. When I saw these stats, I was quite blown away and realised that's why my knees hurt so much. All right, but I love to share, and thank you for inviting me. And this is a very personal journey, this. So I will have no apologies for actually sharing some of the amazing experiences I've had over the last 10 years. As I said, or as was said, I received an email from my son, John, at Loughborough University, in telling me all about the NPMS. And at the time, I was working very busily. I had my own company working for the Duke of Edinburgh Award. I was assessing outdoor workers. I was working as a guide and advisor for a tour company. But I thought, hey ho, this looks like fun. Let's go. All right, so if I could have the next slide, please. Here we've got 2 pictures, and I think it's important to understand where I'm coming from. There's been a lot of evidence to show that working and being in the outdoors improves your well-being. All right, and I just love walking trails, and the one on the left is me looking rather paunchy. on the South Downs Way above the Seven Sisters. I consider that to be one of the best walks in the world. And then there's forests, and the evidence now is that walking through a forest not only improves your well-being, but also improves your immune system as well from the chemicals that you breathe in as you're walking through. So this is very much my happy place. So this was an opportunity to actually be involved even more in getting out in the outdoors. Next slide, please. So I dived in. I went to the introductory. I read everything possible. I thought I knew a fair bit about botany. Little did I know what was going to happen. All right. And I asked for my first square. And I got this first square. And to my horror, I found there was no rights of way. There were no roads. It was completely private and no access to it at all. And there's a theme here. My first port of call was the local pub. I was already working in the Cotswolds at Bourton in the Water, and this wasn't too far away, so I could fit it in quite well. So chatting in the pub, I was told that it would belong to the Gyting Grange estate and that I should go and see Christian, the manager. So off I trotted, chatted to Christian, who said, "Oh yes, that's our tenant farmers. You might know him well. He's called Adam Hansen. And if you're a country file person, you'll know all about Adam Hansen." All right, so off I trotted, all right, and I met his partner, it was called Duncan, his business partner, and we had a lovely time. And I have to say, at the time, my opinion of farmers was quite poor, but that was going to change. So working with Duncan, we set up 5 plots, and I started to survey those 5 plots and did that for a few years. But then I thought, I did the identity plants course, which was excellent. My botany knowledge was increasing. I was enjoying myself. And I thought, that's some more squares. So I then gained Ebworth, an estate held by the National Trust. All right. And I picked up 2 squares there. I was a bit ambitious. The good news is between the squares, there's a pub which does excellent food. So I thought, hey ho, all right, this is quite good fun. All right. And then a few years ago, I thought I'd have a mountain one as well. So I end up in the Black Mountains, all right, with an area that's owned by the Badminton Estate, which is just north of where I live in Bristol. And the fun started then. I got more and more into it. If I can go back to Bemborough Farm, there's some very interesting stories to tell here. My plot has the River Windrush running through it, the headwaters of it. And one of the plots is by the Windrush, a nice boggy pot, which I really love. And as I'm walking around, I see otter footprints. And I thought, that's interesting. Otters have reappeared in the Windrush, having been absent for many, many years. And then just 18 months ago, I'm just finishing off the survey, and out of the corner of my eye, I spot a opposite leaf golden saxifrage. Can't say that twice. Which initially I thought was a spurge. And I got excited about this, and I went back and I told Duncan, and we did a bit of research to discover that this is an indicator plant of clean water. And in this time, this is about 8 years now at Bemborough Farm, I discovered that growing crops is really tough, really hard. All right. And they've been working very hard to make sure that they did not pollute the Windrush with runoff. They also worked very hard to ensure that they work with nature, because they'd realised that if they increase the biodiversity, then they use less chemicals on the land, because the biodiversity would do a lot of the work for them. They also carry out bird surveys, bird nesting surveys, and butterfly surveys. And slowly I was beginning to realise that farmers work really hard to grow the crops for us. I hope you love the picture of the great big beastie in the middle. All right. Later on, I'll tell you more about him. All right.
1 minute. Sorry, Chris, to interrupt.
Exactly
1 minute to wrap up.
we're going with that. All right. This slide shows that one of my favourite plants is the woolly thistle, which follows the Fibonacci series. There we go. That's a Google you can go down. All right, so let's have the final side then, shall we, for 1 minute? All right, and there's a final couple of pictures. The top two pictures of me leaning on a post and being put in the stocks are from my work with a holiday company. The guests obviously felt the best part for me was in the stocks. The bottom right-hand one was just recently when I went out with Rachel, and we had a fantastic 4 hours talking through everything whilst at the same time trying to do a survey. If you haven't got a square, then get one. All right, because it's great fun. The support from the NPMS team is amazing, and I'm very, very grateful to all the support that they've given me. So that is my little personal survey. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Chris, for that. It's really interesting to hear your perspectives and to hear that the outdoors and your survey squares are your happy place. That makes me very, very happy too. Thank you. So the next guest we've got lined up for you is Sally Luca. Sally has recorded a video for us. And so if we can have Sally's video up, and I'll introduce her. Thank you. So Sally is a self-confessed natural history anorak. She's an NPMS volunteer as well as one of our training providers through her company called Budding Nature, which she runs with her partner Derek. Budding Nature provides natural history and environmental education. So we're very lucky to have both Sally and Derek as NPMS volunteers, as well as species and habitat specific trainers. So let's hear from Sally, and I hope you enjoy Sally's video.
Hello, I'm Sally, one of the directors at Budding Nature, a Cornwall-based CIC providing enjoyable, high-quality natural history, environmental education and training, as well as habitat surveys and management advice. As an organisation, we promote both ad hoc biological recording and standardised monitoring methodologies, so along with other national monitoring schemes, the NPMS has been on our radar since the outset. In early 2022, an opportunity arose to deliver online training for NPMS on sand dune plant species. Having recently been delivering training for the Dynamic Dunescapes Cornwall project, this was right up our street. The webinar was delivered in August that year, and that was the start of a beautiful relationship with NPMS. At this time, we were also working with a wonderful group of individuals as part of a Cornwall Wildlife Trust project focused on the Penwith Peninsula at the very end of Cornwall. As a group, we agreed to adopt available NPMS squares in the area. In hindsight, we were rather over-ambitious with our commitment, but we have been doing our best. One square had been surveyed previously. However, locating plots proved rather tricky, with some being now inaccessible and others rather boggy underfoot. For others, we found ourselves hanging out on the southwest coast path on arable field edges and in rough wooded areas. The cliffs are still to come. To support our efforts, the lovely Rachel visited us to provide training to the group and other local NPMS volunteers, providing an excellent opportunity to discuss the issues of how to treat Cornish hedges. Meanwhile, Budding Nature has continued to provide training to NPMS volunteers with sessions in Cornwall, Devon, Sussex and South Wales. We're very much looking forward to the next one. Happy 10-year anniversary, NPMS!
Thank you very much, Sally. That was fantastic. It's great to hear about your recording as part of a group activity. That's lovely to know about, and also, of course, to see the wonderful photographs of the Cornish countryside. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Our next guest is Michelle Thomason, and Michelle has produced a video as well. So if we can have Michelle's video, and I'll introduce Michelle. Thank you. So Michelle is based in Sussex. She's been volunteering with the NPMS also since the very beginning and the launch in 2015. She's contributed over 70 surveys and amassed hundreds of species records on her coastal square. We're very lucky to have such a passionate and experienced environmentalist supporting the scheme. So I shall leave it now with Michelle to take us on a virtual trip to the seaside. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Michelle Thompson, and it's late afternoon in early September, and I'm doing my second survey for NPMS. I've been doing this survey for several years, and I have 2 great square plots here which are based on shingle. You can see it's very dried out because of the warmth earlier in the year and the lack of rain. Then I have another plot at the base of the chalk cliffs, and above a linear plot running along a path near the fence. Don't worry, it's safe. And that's lovely chalk grassland plants, part of a SI. You might see greater knapweed, red valerian, wild carrot, etc. Birdsfoot trefoil. Agwood cord from up there. The views are beautiful, but the wind is far too noisy. Yeah, it seems like a lunar landscape because everything's dry, but it's amazing to watch how the plants cope with the sea erosion. They have groins here, and hence the rocks, to try and prevent the beach shingle from moving. And it's great to see how the plants recover after a battering in the winter. And people always ask me what I'm doing when I'm here, and explain as I'm surveying for NPMS. They find it uplifting to know that people are out there volunteering their time to get to know which plants are there and how they're doing. So give it a go. All the best. There's lots of resources for you to try and learn from, so it's great fun.
Great, thank you, Michelle. It's absolutely lovely to see those nice coastal species there, and it's great to hear that passers-by are also interested in what you're doing with your survey. Maybe they'll all take on a square, who knows. Next guest we have is Sue McBean, and Sue is one of our NPMS volunteer photographers. So if we can have Sue's first slide, and I'll introduce Sue. If you could share, Sue. Brilliant.
Okay, that's super.
Thank you, that's wonderful. Sue is, as I said, an NPMS photographer. She's a keen sailor, nurse teacher, and she's a botanist. She's also an Identiplant tutor, and she's based in the north of Northern Ireland, although she was brought up on the Cambridgeshire Fens. Sue brings her photography skills and creative eye to the scheme to help build up an image library of botanical photos that can be used in all sorts of ways to promote and assist the scheme. So we use Sue's images in things like reports, newsletters, training, social media, etc., in a myriad of ways. So Sue's kindly done a roundup of some of her favourite images for us all to enjoy. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Just to say at the start that I've got several activities I'm really interested in: sailing, botany, photography, and keeping fit, keeping young through all of those. But interestingly, as I thought about this, they are not single entities that add together with a plus sign. They actually multiply. So all of them together make for a very rich life. And I'm so grateful to be able to share what I do and find that it's useful. This actually is the turquoise boat is our boat moored just off Col. You can't, unless you arrive on a ferry, you can't just walk onto the island. So we got off on a dinghy, and that year in particular, about 3 years ago, was the first time I climbed from the boat into the dinghy, which is quite a few feet. So I need to get better practiced at that. So I've basically put together very few slides of some of the places we get to through our sailing, and coming back to Col in a little while. So this is on the left a photo of the Iron Islands, which is Game of Thrones territories, very close to where I live here at Ballantoy. And the Wildflower Hour challenge one weekend was to find a gentian. I thought, golly, I've never ever seen a gentian except in a garden centre. So I checked where it was likely to be, and we went and we found it, which was quite exciting. So this is actually the common centaury So moving on here, locally we found that Gary Bog is a very important site here because, as you know, there's so much peat being cut away, but this site is already in great condition and they're doing more work on it to extend it and develop it and improve it. And a couple of summers ago, I came across a flower I'd never seen in my life before, but I had studied it. I knew what bladderwort was, and it was just really exciting to find that I had got utricularia, the minor, the bladder, the utricular minor, the bladderwort, also bog asphodel is very common there, a plant I love, and I'd never seen actually common cow wheat before, so that was great fun to see that. Here we are at Carrera walking. Carrera is a small island off Oban, and again, just only a few years ago, because of my work with NPMS and looking for things to photograph, I came across grass of Parnassus for the first time. Now that I know what I'm looking for and the time of year and where it's likely to be, I see it on Isla and also on the island of Rathlin. It's a very beautiful plant, and I often look at what's available on the internet and I set my standards as being as good as or better than what I can find on the internet. This is us at Oronsay, just a quick weekend trip, and the thing that really struck me, you can just about see the boat anchored off about the middle of the photo on the left there. So we had again to come off on the dinghy, and there's a lot of flag iris there, and also a huge amount, swathes and swathes of sea campion, and I just put for you there on the right at the bottom an image of the capsule, and it's so beautiful inside when the seeds have developed, waiting to be spread. And back to Game of Thrones territory, Ballantoy. This is Elephant Rock, looking the other way from the Iron Islands. On the same day as I saw the Common Century, this is the, let me see, the Greater Sea Spurry. I'm pretty confident on that one. Again, it was the first time I'd seen this, actually. And here we are at Coll, which brings me back. I'd shown you the boat at Coll when I started the show. And when you look at Macca on Wikipedia, it doesn't list Coll, but actually Coll and Tyree both have squares on NPMS. So I'd love to meet up with the person who's doing those surveys. Coll has the most beautiful Macca, and it's actually apparently slightly bigger area than there is on Tyree. I hadn't seen a Macca probably for 4 decades when I saw this one, so I was absolutely enthralled with the red clover everywhere, and at the bottom left you can see the yellow rattle. And I realised when I saw Ragged Robin, I really just haven't been seeing it around Northern Ireland, and when I looked up in the books, it's apparently in decline and it's one of your indicator species. So I'm hoping to go back to Coll this coming summer. So locally here in Merlo Bay, this is looking north towards Scotland, but it's actually on the land of Northern Ireland. The first time I saw sheepspit, again only in the last few years, was on Isla, and I was absolutely enthralled by the absolute bouquet of like a bridal bouquet of flowers within a flower that sheepspit is. So having found it on Isla, I very quickly spotted it on Rathlin Island and also on mainland Ireland here in Northern Ireland. And I just put that image up there at the top right of what it's like before it opens. It's a bit like an engagement ring. I thought you'd like that one. So back to my doorstep, because it's not all about sailing. We have a woodland which I can actually see from the window where I'm sitting. Mount Sandalwood, it's a deciduous oak and beech woodland. I think it's fairly old. There's a lot of bluebells, wood anemones, quite a lot of things. And interestingly, going back to Chris's point, I was a bit shocked when I realised that the golden saxifrage, I just assumed it was opposite leaved. And then, of course, did a lot more checking over the years. And as far as I'm aware, on this island of Ireland, there isn't alternate. So I'm fairly safe on that one. Perhaps it's somewhere and I need to look for it, but it isn't recorded on the distribution maps as far as I can see. But I included these two images because Himalaya balsam, which I've got lots of close-up photos I can show you of the flowers, which I've always thought are rather attractive, even though it's such an awful plant. And I've listened to my friends who are beekeepers, they say, oh, the bees love it. But this summer, after years of clearing the ash, the canopy is wide open, and the balsam this summer really took off. In the books it says 2.5 meters. This is, I think it was 3 meters. It's huge. And actually at the bottom where the stems are, and this is why it's really such a problem more than anything, apart from the fact that not too many insects would eat it or use the pollen and nectar. At the bottom, nothing is growing. It's as sterile as land that's had slug pellets put on it. Even if you zoom in on it, which I'm not going to do, even the nettles are struggling to actually grow underneath it. That's what the problem is. Now, there's also a problem, which I was talking to Karen about, is that after Storm Owen in January, this trees were over and plants that were attached to the trees were thrown up. And I was horrified to see, again, I'd never seen it before, this is the hemlock water dropwort, which is apparently UK's most poisonous plant, right in amongst where the balsam is if people go balsam bashing. So this is quite frightening. And just lastly, I'm working on a project myself with ivy, and there's a disc of nectar there which isn't photographed very often, and before the anthers dehisce, they look like hearts. That's me. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sue. That was a real inspiration to pick up the camera and take the camera out through the survey season. Wonderful. And thank you to everyone who's taken part in Volunteer Voices. It's been really interesting, and thank you for everything you've prepared, and indeed to you all for being part of the NPMS community. I'm going to hand back quickly to Rachel now for some final words and inspiration before we break for lunch. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Karen, and thank you so much, Sally, Michelle, Sue and Chris. Really inspiring. But of course, while we are time limited today, we do absolutely love to hear from our volunteers about their surveys each season, and it's always an absolute pleasure to see them out and about in the field. So I've had actually the lovely pleasure of compiling some images submitted by volunteers of themselves out and about in their allocated sites. So we just thought we could spend a couple of minutes enjoying very much a whistle-stop tour of the country, from Inverness down to Kent, stopping at County Antrim and elsewhere en route. So it's been an incredibly important and I think really moving way to illustrate the breadth of participation, with volunteers heading out to their sites up and down the country to help us to monitor. Thanks.